the European Parliament has erupted into open revolt against Ursula von der Leyen's push to expand the European Union to Ukraine, Moldova, and the Western Balkans. MEPs from across Europe accused Brussels of acting like an empire, stripping nations of sovereignty and silencing dissent under the pretext of unity. The debate over enlargement has now turned into an ideological war between federalists who want a stronger Brussels and nationalists warning of a second Soviet Union.
The enlargement of the European Union is a legal and political process. Turning it into a geopolitical tool undermines the Treaty for the European Union. And if the veto right is removed, the European Union will turn into a second Soviet Union. The European Union needs to enlarge according to clear criteria, and not by convenience. A reform is needed, but we shouldn't rush towards it, even less should we use it as a mask for authoritarianism and federalization.
From Paris to Amsterdam, MEPs lashed out at Ursula von der Leyen's leadership, accusing her of transforming the EU into a top-down empire, where bureaucrats rule over elected governments. The French nationalist bloc said the European Commission's obsession with enlargement has become a tool to centralize power in Brussels and crush dissent from member states.
Welcoming weak countries, economically or institutionally, would mean that we would redistribute seats, voting rules that would make those that are net contributors of the 24 billion by France, for example, in 2025, that would increase their burden. Now, as a moral imperative, the Commission is trying to centralize power, weaken the voice of nations, dilute them without any popular legitimacy. Sveg said, "When people no longer believe in their own destiny, others will decide in their place. That is why we reject enlargement." 3442. It shouldn't be done to the detriment of sovereignty.
Dutch MEPs from the far-right Patriots for Europe movement ridiculed the plan, warning that the EU is turning into an ever-expanding empire built on redistribution and control. They warned Ursula's push to abolish national vetoes would silence small nations and force taxpayers to fund endless expansion.
An ever-expanding union means that we have more net recipients and a smaller group of net contributors. And this redistribution mechanism weakens the EU as a whole. So you have Brussels making decisions. And what would happen to the veto right that is being attacked? And it is not a good thing. It's not progress. 541. If we lose sight of expediency, sovereignty, and common sense, we must stop collecting countries like stamps.
Swedish nationalists blasted Brussels for what they called moral blackmail, accusing von der Leyen of forcing countries to accept Ukraine's membership against public will. They claimed the EU was handing citizenship to millions and punishing nations that resist centralization.
Can you explain to Swedish voters why we should grant EU membership to a country that hosts terrorists, fuels organized crime, and drives migration into Europe? Can you convince them that EU citizenship should be handed to 85 million Muslims? Can you persuade Swedish taxpayers that they must pay even more into Brussels? Of course not. That's why you want to take away Sweden's sovereignty. I was sent here to defend Swedish democracy, not to dismantle it. And that is why I vote no.
In one of the most stinging attacks, Romanian MEP Adrian Georgiou Axinia accused Ursula von der Leyen of seeking unchecked power, comparing her enlargement and defense plans to the EU's vaccine scandal. He said the new report gives the Commission a free hand to buy weapons and override national parliaments.
For instance, abolishing the veto or giving Ursula von der Leyen total freedom to start the military purchases the same way she did with the vaccines. And last but not least, bypassing the European Parliament. As a European MEP, I support extending the European Union. There are countries that have already started the process. They have made sacrifices. They have made reforms. They deserve it. But I don't believe that we should couple states together as we have with Ukraine and Moldova. Every state has to be evaluated individually, and that's a more effective approach, and that would help Moldova that is ready and willing to join.
From Greece to Hungary, resistance is spreading. Greek lawmakers say removing the veto could let Turkey get away with crimes, while Hungary's Patriots for Europe warn that Brussels' imperial ambitions will destroy the Union from within. What was meant to be Ursula von der Leyen's defining moment may now be remembered as her biggest political mutiny.
This is madness, what you're displaying. You want also weaker member states and stronger Brussels to set conditions, such as the abolition of the veto for the enlargement. It's madness. You want to give up more rights to Brussels bureaucrats who are out of touch with reality. And I agree together with patriots that if there were more opportunities to veto, then we would be safer in the EU.
Europe's unity dream is cracking from within, and the rebellion against Ursula's Imperial Europe has only begun.